Hey, everybody out there in podcast land. I am Will, our Halfling Wizard. You can find me on social medias, and I am one of three of the Diver-Gents coming at you this evening. I will let my co-hosts introduce themselves, and I'm going to let them choose their own order. This kind of imposed my order on them last time.
Thank you, Mikey. Saludos, programas, and welcome. I am Adolfo, the nerdy Puerto Rican, here at the Vibe Tribe. You can catch me on the Brave New World, Neon Memories Academy, and over at the Biconics. But I am here with my two other beautiful humans in the Divergence. And tonight we are finishing up our conversation on accessibility.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's accessibility plus representation.
Right. Yes.
Step together a little bit. We're talking. Yeah.
And we were going to speak about representation in accessibility representation in movies and the TV and cinema.
Yes. I think last time we ranted on about Barbara Gordon.
Yep. Which got us into the comic book conversation.
Yeah. And I think it's funny, not really funny. When we talk about like accessibility and visibility and things of that in movies, one of the coolest moments in a movie that I remember was in the Kingsman. I think it's the one with the woman that has like the swords for legs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I loved that. I was like, wow, look at that. That is really cool. She's vicious, but I was like, look at that. There's a handy, capable person. And I thought they were represented in the coolest way. Yes, they were represented as a villain, but I thought, wow, isn't that cool? I was like, that's so neat. And I know it's such an odd example because, again, she's like super villain. And you get into that whole thing about, so only handicapped people can be villains in movies. They can't be like the hero or anything. But let's talk about that. So what are your thoughts on that sort of thing?
That is a very sharp razor's edge to dance on, because then you start going into the conversation of only brown people play villains, or only this play villain, only that play villains. I think in the case of the Kingsman, that character, which we have to look up her name, but I think she was fantastic, and her fight scene, that was one of the most inventive,
so cool
and super cool fight scenes that I have seen in a long time in cinema. And it's actually funny you mentioned her, because over the weekend we went over to my in-laws' house, and on the way back, we were coming back early Sunday morning to our house, and I actually saw an individual who was a double leg amputee who was out running with those types of the
blades.
The running. Yeah. And I apologize if I'm using the incorrect terminology, but the amputation, what is it called? I am such a horrible person. But yeah, they were out running with the things, and it was really cool seeing them get at it. So even though, coming back to the Kingsman, Mikey, did you get the name?
Yep. That's it.
Yeah, and again, this is my own personal thing, my own personal thought, but even though Gazelle was a villain, she was a cool villain. So, and there's always that thing of you can either write them bad or write them good. And I think in this case, it was a case of a handy-capable person being written well, very well.
I agree.
Because she wasn't also just a badass with her legs, but it was a very interesting flip of the narrative, because the true villain, Samuel L. Jackson's character, was super squeamish about blood and germs and stuff like that. And Gazelle was just like, would you please, really? When she would go, and as they would say back in the day, she had a bigger ball sack than he did. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And the metal running thing, they're actually called blades.
Okay, so the blades, there we go.
I looked them up.
Thank you. So yeah, that was, I think that her portrayal was done well. Now, I can give an example of a portrayal in a movie that was not done well, and that was the most. Actually, I can't even say the most recent Predator movie. Hang on one second. It was the 2018 Predator movie called The Predator, where the Predator was actually hunting supposedly the son of the main protagonist, because the son the son is autistic, and according to the movie, autism, the genetic makeup of autism is like the final link that's needed to bring the predator race to the next evolutionary step or something like that. Which sounds cool on paper, but unfortunately, what they ended up doing was using the normal old like tropes for this little kid. Like they were a super genius at numbers, and they didn't like talking to anyone, and they were constantly by themselves type thing. So it was very much just like a really backhanded portrayal.
I have to say, sorry to interrupt, but I have to say, that sounds like an awful idea. This actually carries us into the other half of what we want to talk about, which is exploitation of things, of accessibility and things of that nature. Because to use autism as and I think they probably were trying to make it like a good thing. Like autism is not bad. It's like the next evolutionary. I get that, but that really seems. I don't even know what the word for it is. It's just the whole time we were talking about it, I was just like, that sounds like such a bad idea.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Because in the movie, the kid is actually able to access the predator's armor, and is able to like use the predator's armor and shit. And like when they get to the predator ship, it's the kid that can open the door without any issues, because he has that autistic trait of being super good with numbers and what have you. So yeah, they really, I don't even want to say they really tried, but it seemed like it was a very half-hearted attempt at making autism a superpower, as it were.
And that's kind of where I'm iffy about it. And not the autism being a superpower thing, but I think that if you have to draw attention to it, like you have to say, he's autistic. His autism is what makes him important. And I'm like, I think that shouldn't you just create a character that is autistic and let them win the day?
Yeah.
Rather opposed to going, that's his autism they're really after.
Yep.
So I think that's where my prickles started to go up.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with Hollywood's wanting to run to get to the finish line. Like they want to run, and they're like, you know what we should do? We should put as many POCs as we can in every movie we make. We should put as many gay characters as we can in every movie that we make. We should put as many handicapped people in every movie that we make. And yay, we'll have everything. And so we don't get characters that are three-dimensional, that are super complex. We get a lot of stereotypes. And you can look back when we were talking about villains and things like that. When gay people were gay characters were in movies, they were either the super foppish clown characters, or they were the bad guy. They were the murderers. They were the people who got it in the end in the Hobbs. So I think what Hollywood needs to do, and of course no one's asked me my opinion on it, but I'm going to give it anyway, is I think that if they're going to make a movie, like a whole POC, people of color movie, then they need to make a movie where the characters makes fucking sense. And not just, hey, let's put a bunch of brown people in a movie and make lots of money on it because a lot of brown people will go see it. And I'm a white guy, and I enjoy movies that have POCs as main characters. I do. Like I enjoy like the Wakanda Forever and things of that nature. I love those types of things. But I also like characters that have depth. If you just throw a brown, black, yellow, whatever person in a role just so that you can get that particular audience in your seats, I think that is a huge disservice to the community in which that character represents. So
Yeah.
I think these super like when in the 90s, early 2000s, when gay characters started to hit the scene, like truly, they were so two-dimensional gay characters that there was no depth to them. And people were just like, oh, look, there's gay people on movies. And it's all okay. But as Mikey was saying, that's an aspect. It's not who they are, but that's how they're represented. It's like they are gay. So gay is the way it is. They're usually flamboyant or super in the closet, or there's no true depth to them. There's very much two-dimensional stereotype. And that annoys me. And not just for like gay characters, but all characters. Because being a theater person, character depth is extremely important to me. So when you have two-dimensional superheroes, just because it's like, hey, we need to create a gay superhero, so let's create one real quick and throw it in this movie for the last 15 seconds of the movie. And then it just pisses me off. It just pisses me off. And I know people are like, oh, but it's representation. No, it's not. It's exploitation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just really quick, bouncing off of the points that the two of you made, especially when it comes to handicapable individuals and mental health issues in Hollywood, I feel that the writers, they don't do any research, or whatever research they do is very just like on the surface type, and where they pull all like the stereotypes and stuff like that, and they'll throw it on there, and they'll be like, this is how an autistic person operates, this is how oh man, what cognitive thing did Rain Man have? What was that? Yeah, that's how you get your Rain Mans and these roles. And the other thing, and then the other part too is that a majority of the moviegoers, when they go and see this, they look at Rain Man, they're like, oh, that's such a heroic portrayal of someone like that, or like Forrest Gump. You're Forrest Gump, and the public just eats that up. And it's no, that's a stereotype. And I think they based him off of a real character, if memory serves me correctly. Okay. Excuse me, I just burped. And another trope that Hollywood likes to exploit is that the handicapable person is like the weakest link on the team. So, for example, in Blade 3, the character that Natasha Leone, I think it is, Natasha Leone plays, her name is Summerfield. She was blind, but she was the tech genius of the group. And she was such a cool character. But then they fridged her. Like we got maybe like 10 minutes worth of screen time, and then she gets fridged and just taken out super easy just because she's blind. And it's Hollywood does that, and it's so frustrating. And they do that so that they can have the protagonist, no, they killed this, I'm angry. It's it's the whole fridging thing, and it's so frustrating when that happens. It just, yeah. All right. Thank you, Mikey. The other unfortunate thing is that it's the thought process of Hollywood moves much like a transoceanic cargo vessel, in that once it starts going, it goes. Not fast, not slow, just like at this medium pace, right? And then, good, bad, or indifferent, that's the way it's going. And then for it to actually make a turn, it takes forever to change its course. And I think that now we are in that the captain is trying to change course a little bit, but it's still going to take a long time for the boat to really right itself, and for these writers and these directors to actually do their research and do their due diligence to create characters. And now, I'm not saying that there's not any characters out there that have disability that are portrayed bad. The one character that comes to mind, and maybe it is a hot spot, I don't know, but the TV show on ABC, The Good Doctor, I mean, that show's been on. The only reason I bring that show up is it's been on for a long time. And I know that it's won a few awards. So I'm assuming, and of course we all know what happens when I assume, I make an ass out of me and me, but I'm assuming that the portrayal of the main character who has some sort of social disorder. Fact check, Mikey. Fact check, Mikey's fact checking. Fact checking. He's a fact checker. Fact checker. Checking the facts. Making sure Adolfo's not blowing out his ass. Okay. All right. So yeah, but I know this show's been on for a long time, and I know that they've had the same actor as that character. So I'm making that assumption that it is at least an okay portrayal of autism and savant syndrome. So now, audience, if you're out there and I'm wrong, please feel free to tell me I'm wrong. Educate me, please. No doubt. It's that whole 15 minutes worth of fame thing, which is a shame. But you're right. It would be nice if, instead of people reveling in that 15 minutes of fame and then moving on to the next thing, if they would actually sit and dwell, or not dwell, but sit in that discomfort, I should say. Sit in that discomfort and learn. Along those lines, that Vice news story that I watched a few weeks ago, or the other week, about air travel with a wheelchair, right? Over on Vice, I watched it on YouTube. They did a expose about air travel for people in wheelchairs and how it is a fucking nightmare. How a lot of people's with wheelchairs, especially the powered wheelchairs, they're these which cost like in excess of $20,000. These people, quite often, their wheelchairs get broken because the flight crews, they don't know how to break it down properly to fit in the undercarriage of the plane, and so they just break these wheelchairs. And the airline gives little shits. The airline gives little shits about your lost luggage anyway. A person's wheelchair, doubly so, of shits not given. And it was very interesting to watch this. I feel that for the majority to learn about this, they need to sit in that discomfort. They need to watch this expose, and then they need to sit, go speak with a person. Maybe they have a friend or a relative that needs a wheelchair or some sort of other movement assistance. Speak to them on it and live in that discomfort, and then speak up about it. Because if it's one thing, this whole Dungeons and Dragons OGL thing reminded me, is that there is power when people speak up, when a lot of people speak up. And if more than just the handy-capable community speak up, then maybe some of these changes could be made. And we could see some of these changes in Hollywood. We could see some of these changes in daily life. We could see some of these changes for people that have to fly and have invisible handicaps. Because that's another thing too, is invisible handicaps. It's if more people would just sit in that discomfort and learn about those situations and then speak up and add their voices to that, I think more change could be made for the better. Instead of tossing people these little breadcrumbs. Oh, hey, look, there's an autistic kid in the Predator movie, but it's like a stereotypical autistic kid. Oh, here's a blind super tech savant. Oh yeah, she gets killed off in the first 10 minutes for plot reasons. And I think that's where that change will happen. And on the other side of that, us writers, both in Hollywood and not in Hollywood and whatnot, we need to, if we do write about these things, we need to educate ourselves. We need to interview. We need to get down to get down and get our hands dirty so that you can write the most accurate portrayal and also move out of the way. So if an artist, a handy-capable artist wants to come up and present a thing, we need to move over and let them present their thing and let them and let more and more handy-capable individuals into the spotlight so that ship can start really making that slow turn, can start speeding up a little bit. That's just my 2 cents.
And a valid 2 cents it was. Every nickel counts, man. Yeah, with me, it's beating a dead horse. Just do it right. Do it right the first time. And you don't have to worry about people coming at you. That's the thing. It's do your due diligence, or do your research. You don't know what it is, Google search it. You don't know what it is, if that doesn't work, talk to someone who does know what it is. And it's like in the movies when, like, for instance, and I'll use Star Trek as an example because they're notorious for it. And that is, they're like, we want to make a movie that's made by the fans. And it's, oh, this is cool. And then they don't actually do it, or they do a version of what they think the fans would want. And it's, if you're going to do a movie for the fans, then you should probably talk to them and get to know them. Like, actually get to know them, not just look at them from across a plate glass window at a Comic-Con. Get down and get to know who they are. One of the greatest things, and this is a side note, is I went to a Star Trek convention back in the day when it was just Star Trek conventions. And Magil Barrett Roddenberry was one of the guest speakers. And she did a big forum speaking, like, in the whole convention. And when she was done talking, they escort them out the back to go do whatever they're going to do. But she wouldn't let them. She literally walked down into the group of people and talked to people as she walked to the autograph area, because that's where she was headed. And she literally was listening to these people. They were telling her their stories, and she's like, this is why my husband did what he did for people like you guys. He listened to you people. He listened to the fans of the show. So when they were talking about Next Generation, he's like, when he was building Next Generation, he listened to the fans. Like, what do you want to see in Star Trek? What do you want? What is it that you would like to see? And a lot of that stuff was built on fan stuff. And then you have J.J. Abrams, God bless him, who's we have live feed with Star Trek fans. We're putting questions out there, and they don't really know what it is. We're just like trolling the chat forums and trying to get information from the fans. And the Abrams Star Treks were not horrible. They were pretty good for what they were. But it so wasn't really what fans wanted. But it felt like a fan movie. That makes any sense? Like, it felt like it was almost like it was fan-made movie, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know if you're, Adolfo, I don't know if you're watching Picard right now, third season. But you want to talk about fan-made? Picard is fan-made. That is for the fans, and I mean, it has every freaking thing in it that a Star Trek nerd will love. Everything. Third season especially. Third season is like super lip service to fans and Star Trek nostalgia and all this. Oh, it's fantastic. It's brilliant. And it's, there you go.
That's how
If you just do it and you do it right and you do your research and you go into it and you go, hey, this is what you guys want and we're going to give it to you. as opposed to, well, we listened to you, but we're going to interpret what you said to us in our own way and present it to you. And I think we see that a lot in superhero movies too. That idea. Here, I'm going to make a fan movie around this particular superhero, but not really. But anyway, very much if you're going to do it the first time. And I already jumped on my soapbox earlier about if you're gonna make a character that's specific to a particular either handicapable or a person of color, whatever, make them real people. Stop making them either that or they're either the sidekick. It's very rare that we get to see any of these people in a lead role, and when we do, they usually end up dying tragically. I can use an example: Brokeback Mountain. Yeah, it was a great movie. That's one of my favorites. But why did Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah, we lost him. You can do it. You can do it. Back to it. Yep. And don't think you're safe from it either, straight people, because that's when we start talking about fridging the girlfriend, which is another thing. I mentioned it earlier, but pretty much fridging the girlfriend. It was a term that was coined in the comic industry when Carl Rayner, Green Lantern. So there is a storyline with one of the Lanterns at DC, and the TLDR is that the dude's girlfriend ends up getting killed and put into a refrigerator, and he comes home and he finds her in the fridge dead, and that spurs him on to go and fight the evil that needs to be fought. And that is a common trope in comics and also in movies where you quote unquote you fridge the girlfriend, where a female character has to die so that the male protagonist can feel guilt and the story has a more poignant point to move on from. I mean, media, we need to do better.
Overall, globally. So, all right. I think that's going to round us out tonight. I think. Thank you all for joining us, and of course, any comments or suggestions you have, please drop them in the comments. And we'd love to hear what you guys think and would like to hear us talk about. And I guess we'll sign off. I am Will, or Captain Wizard on social medias here and there, and I'm one of 3 of the Diver-Gents.
And I am Adolfo, the nerdy Puerto Rican. Another of the 3 of the Diver-Gents.
This has been a Vibe Tribe production. Remember, take care of each other, love one another, and as always, keep those good times rolling. We'll see you next time.